For me, certainly, if someone doesn't see me as a black woman, I get offended. Just say 100 armed officers came, you alone, you cannot fight them, and they took you away, and they treated you in the worst way that humanity has ever seen, right? Would you not, in front of your kids, and maybe your kids had to go through that as well, just put yourself for a minute in that situation? I think this is also going back to shame, because even some of us are shameful of who we are.
The Risk Podcast. It's been a while since we saw Haddy, and how long has it been? Been a few years now,
Um,
hasn't it?
yes, I think over 10 years. I
Wow,
believe it was 2014 or 15.
wow, wow,
15
wow.
maybe, yes.
A lot has happened since then. I'm really pleased to have you on the podcast. As you know, this is my new platform for podcasting, the Risk podcast. And you are my second guest, so I'm really pleased to be doing this with you. So
Thanks for
welcome.
having me, Chiz.
A pleasure.
It's been a long time and I enjoyed working with you, being with you when we were in London. So yeah, it's great to catch up again
Yes,
in this
yes,
manner,
yes.
in a more
So what's been happening all that time? I can
open.
see you've taken a number of directions into a few things which we're going to talk about, some really fascinating stuff. So what's been up? Risk and now, diversity, equality, racism, and activists. What's going on here? Tell us.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. So I'm still practicing risk management. That's not stopping at the moment. That's going on. But I moved from London to York in 2016 or 15, I should say. And yes, I am now an activist, proudly a work activist in racial justice and racial equality, merely from a very horrific personal experience that took place when I moved to York, just a few months after I moved to York, which led me to start asking questions. And when the questions were not answered sufficiently, and I wasn't satisfied that the city of York leaders were not doing much on racism, I decided to spearhead and lead on making that change for the city, for everyone, but mainly for those that do experience overt racism and institutional racism.
Wow, that sounds huge. Would you say that's the biggest or one of the biggest risks you've ever taken?
That's the biggest risk I've ever taken.
Wow.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am in my late 30s and I cannot remember taking this big risk. It's a risk on my health, it's a risk on my mental and emotional health mainly. But also, you have to remember this work, I and me and the volunteers that work with me, we do this work weekends, evenings, and any spare time we have. So we are sacrificing, in some sense, our time with our families, our time to do things we like doing, just to make sure this generation, hopefully, and the next generation, certainly, will not have to experience and endure what we do and what our past ancestors have been going through. It's
Wow.
very ambitious, but we believe that we can make that change happen.
I'm super proud of you, to be taking this challenge, and absolutely it's an area that requires a lot of work to be done to transform the way uh, people of different backgrounds and races integrate in whatever societies they're in. How do you manage the impact on your emotional well-being? Because this is tasking.
Yeah, it's tasking. Yeah, and it's also Um, look, I lot of people, especially people in our culture, i.e., the black culture, we don't really talk about therapy. But I am a massive champion and advocate in counseling and seeking therapy. I started doing that when my father passed away. But to answer your question, I make sure I know it's an expensive thing to do, but I make sure I seek therapy to help me manage my emotions, but more certainly to be armed with the tools I need to make sure that the work we are doing does not affect me. It will happen, these things will happen, but it doesn't affect my spirit and it doesn't affect who I am or change me for no reason. So, we get abuse, we get insults, we get the microaggressions, the undertones, we get all of these things, Chiz. But we must have the tools to make sure we manage and navigate those things. And that's how I deal with it.
That's great. Now onto this question, which obviously this came from me, knowing a little bit about your company, the organization using to spearhead this movement.
Yeah.
Your mission to make York the first anti-racist and inclusive city in the north of England to suggest to people that York is a racist city. How would you address that?
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that?
You are correct. But can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I'm not trying to bluff or anywhere, but we are incredibly proud in what we do. Not just to make York an anti-racist and inclusive city, but the first in the north of England. I just want to shout out to my team for us to achieve that. To your question,
Wait, hold on.
is
Shout out, team. Well done, team. We're rooting for you over here.
you froze a little bit, but I'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I was shouting out to your team.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, is York? Does the title mean is York an anti-race? Is York a racist city? No, and I'll explain. Just bear with me here, and I
Sure,
want to
please go
make
ahead.
sure it's very clear to everyone. Um, I think we ought to be careful in generalizing people, a country, a city, or a town to being a racist city or town or whatever, because we cannot do that. It's if you take it at the micro level. I cannot come to your home, for instance. You invite me to your home, and I may have a bad experience with one of your family members. I cannot therefore say your family is a bad family, right? I cannot say that. So it's the same when it comes to racism. We cannot say we've had number of racist or a lot of racism in the city, and therefore the entire city is racist. So no, what we are saying is when we look at the data, it tells us that the city has some serious issues of racism, not just overt racism, but institutional racism.
Can you
And
give some
therefore,
examples?
for example, of course. So, one example when it comes to day to day overt racism, when you look at the police hate crime, racial hate crime data from 2010 to 2021, racism has increased by 239%.
Wow.
Okay, 239%. Now, and on every report, on every hate crime report, racial hate crime is always at the top, always. So that's one evidence to tell you people that work in York, live in York, or visit York, we experience these things. The second, in terms of institutional racism or barriers, just think about this. Our city of York councillors, right? There is no ethnicity, no diversity when it comes to ethnicity, when it comes to gender, well, perhaps gender, there are some women. But when it comes to ethnicity, there is zero.
Are you saying they're all white?
They're all white.
Wow.
They are all white. So, me, for instance, or people from ethnic minorities, who's representing us? When it comes to decision making, when it comes to policy making, who is saying, actually, that doesn't work for the Black community? No one. So we are being left behind. And that causes structures and systems being built, and our voices, our experiences are not being factored in, and therefore we continue to experience the barriers that we have been experiencing for decades and decades. um, I don't want to label too much on policing, but there's another worrying evidence that shows when it comes to stop and search, and I know this has been a UK-wide issue, um, Black people in York are 90 times more likely to be stopped and searched. Now, this is not me just telling you, this is the data we have received and quantified, and it's resulting to demonstrate 90 times more likely. Asian people are 18 more times likely to be stopped and searched by our white counterparts. That's not parity. That is a huge disproportionate disparity.
It is.
And, can it be explained? Yes, it can be. But the data is telling us there is some racial undertones and issues resulting to that. So when we bring all these things together, right? And when we say, hang on a minute, and we listen to the stories of those of lived experiences, we then have to question ourselves and say, what are we doing about it? And for me, certainly leading on this, words are important, and setting an intention is incredibly a powerful thing. So we must set an intention to say we want to make York an anti-racist city so that we all feel welcomed, we all feel included, and we are treated fairly. So words are powerful. So we set that intention and we use that label to start making the work happen.
What would you say is the root cause of this racial disparity between, the whites, the Asians, and the Black community in Europe? And we can expand that further into England or the whole UK as a whole. But let's just focus on York for now.
You broke off there a little bit. The root cause of
what would you say is the root cause of the racial disparity in York?
Yeah.
Between the Asians, the whites, and the Black community, and we can expand that into expand the wider across the UK. But let's just focus on York at the moment.
Okay, I think the number one thing is that York is seen as, I hear this all the time, York is a white city. I don't understand that. And that language, actually, that narrative is very dangerous. So when you say York is a white city, does it mean other people are not welcome? So I think when you come to York, you hear that all the time. That needs to be abolished. It needs to completely be gone. So that's one, because people think because York is an affluent, predominantly white populated city, so anyone that comes to York, you really do feel that you are alone. So when you are walking, and you're the only Black woman, right? You're the only Black person. So you'll start to get the looks, and therefore, because you're different, you don't look like them, you might be easily profiled. So I think that's one of the root causes. It's not seen as diverse, it's not seen as other people from different backgrounds are not really predominantly in York. And therefore they see someone that look like you. Oh my God, we need to do something about this. Who is this? Why are they here? Are they trying to steal something? Are they trying to cause issues? That is a deep rooted issue in York. Number two, I mentioned the councillors. Even the City of York decision makers, we lack representation. So when policies are being made, people from marginalized communities are not being factored in. And what that can lead, it has a ripple effect. So if we talk about financing, for instance, we're building a system or a policy, and our voices are not there to be represented. So it can cause a fraction or a fracture, should I say, of our community not having access to opportunities, not having access to facilities and services. And that will continue to make sure those people who are already perhaps not wealthy, not and very poor, continue to be, poorer and continue to be more in a dire situation. And therefore, what happens? You're poor, you're Black, or you're Asian, or you're Chinese, and you're profiled, poor housing, all those things, then therefore leads to what? Oh my God, he's a criminal.
Mm.
Because you don't
Yeah.
look the power, you don't look that, what you should look like as a wealthy, affluent person living in York. There are many issues, but I think those are the two main ones.
You know what crosses my mind is, I mean, before I say what I was going to say, do you have the current statistics of, the population of York at the moment and the splits, white, black, Asian? Do you have that data at the moment?
We do. If you go onto our website, we do, but not in my head right now. So
Okay, that's fine.
we
But
publish a
the reason why,
strategy which has the data. But just to quickly give an example, because this is interesting, because
Mhm.
this caused so much a problem that we had the Daily Mail coming to York and trying to discredit our work. So the last census shown that York has increased in terms of population. I think just over 200,000 or a little bit more than that. An ethnic minority in York, the population increased to approximately 14%. Right? So it is increasing. It's growing because
Not a
people,
small number.
it's a small number, but compared to the last census, it has
Mhm.
increased. And what the argument we are saying is, although it's a small number, it's increasing. But that increase means that we must have diverse
Representation.
councillors because we need to be represented. We must have diverse representation at the council because we are increasing in numbers. And that created so much hoo-ha that we had the Daily Mail contacting me, contacting some of our partners, coming to York to discredit that data. But it's an accurate data.
You know what just crossed my mind now is like, if you're having to be, if you're, let's say, for example, a black person going to court to address a crime, and
Yeah.
every member of the jury is all white and no representation, how is that meant to be fair analysis of whatever the case is?
Yeah.
So and I think that's what you are calling out here to be the one of the biggest problems is that lack of representation, which obviously doesn't cater to the interests of those who we refer as, people of ethnic minority. I hate that term ethnic minority, but we'll just use that for we'll just use that, as a label at the moment. But I do hate that term ethnic minority because no one is a minority. We are all individuals, people of the same you know, I don't know how to put it, but we are all equal. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I just that's really fascinating, and I do want to
yes.
come back to your question, but can I ask you just on that ethnic minority thing, because how I see it, for example, if you go to London, right, you go to a place that is predominantly black, so that would mean there's a white ethnicity that is minority.
I get
So
I get the expression.
for me,
Yes,
that's how I defined it.
but
It
a lot
doesn't
of
mean that
people.
we are minority. It's just
Yeah, but that's
inherently.
how a lot of people see it, though, that, when you say the term ethnic minority, it means that you are lower, you are of a lower class. And this
Okay.
is where it gets, really muddled up.
Yeah.
There's obviously a class system, in the world today, and it's more predominant in certain societies. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes the words we use tend to materialize into how it's perceived literally. Yeah, and that's one of the problems. For example, saying, that we're black, we're white, you know. Who is black? I mean, I haven't seen anyone as black is supposed to be, or as white as this paper. So
So
again, these are labels that obviously I kind of think fosters, these divisions amongst ourselves, as a human race, not color, race, or anything like that.
yeah. So
But it's the world we live in.
so you are my friend, and you are someone I
Yes.
look up to, and I'm not sure if time would allow us to dive into it, but I also have a difference in view on that.
Okay.
If you want to hear
Tell
it.
me. Yeah. Yeah. Please tell me. Let us hear it.
So I think that for me, certainly, if someone doesn't see me as a black woman, I get offended because, and I also think that it's very important, right, to appreciate who we are. So I'll give you an example. This was a couple of years ago when I was doing a talk, and I think before the beginning, I asked them, "What do you see?" Right, and no one could not. This is just the point that you've made to say that there are people
Yes.
that also believe that. No one could not. They were saying, "Oh, you wear glasses," because I usually wear my reading glasses. You wear glasses. You have a nice smile. You're beautiful. You're this. You're that. You have your hair. They were describing all things. You're wearing a blue top, for example, or wearing, and no one could not tell me I am a black person, a
The
black
color of your skin. Yeah.
the color of my skin. I think they were fearful.
So on that part, so why would they be scared to say the color of your skin is black or anything like that?
I don't
Because you can see
know.
that it's not just one side, it's not one-sided. There must be some sort of signal they receive from the black community or the black race that makes them a bit
Yeah.
shy about saying you're black. And I have a lot
Yeah.
to say on that. But what do you think the reason is?
I think, frankly speaking, Chiz, I think that there's so much work we all need to do, because I think there is a little bit of shame, if not a lot of shame, associated with being black. Or, you know, I have,
Is that why so many black
I
people
know,
are bleaching?
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. We have the bleaching epidemic,
Bleaching
although
cream.
it's their choice, but, that has some serious health issues, but um I think there's a lot of shame to it. But I think we need to understand why the shame. Because for me, when I look, and I think the shame may be how we were treated during the slave trade and during colonization. And we need to have a conversation why the shame. Yes,
Yes.
what we were done was criminal, was a shameful
We're
way of
talking hundreds of years
living.
ago, though.
Sorry?
We are talking hundreds of years ago, and are still holding on to that stigma.
We are taught, yes, I agree, we are. But I think if we don't deal with that issue, we will continue in the next 100 years to have this issue, because the pain has not been healed. Without healing the pain, right? Or without accepting or apologizing to the criminality of events that took place, how can we move forward? At the end of the day, we are all human beings, and how our ancestors were treated, it has to be acknowledged, which I believe King Charles acknowledged it was wrong. But have we got the apology to say we are sorry? We are
Okay.
immensely
Hold
sorry.
that thought. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Please just hold that thought. I don't want you to go too far. I want to just, hone back in on what you said earlier on in terms of, a lot of work we need to do amongst ourselves, as the Black race. I'm going to share a personal experience with you and something, an observation. I had to write this down. Number one, and I want to hear your views on this. So within my family, there are mixed race children, both immediate and in extended family. And there is an observation I've made of a special interest or a more special love for the mixed race children over the Black race children. It's not just within my family. I've seen that in many Black families. Why would you say that is?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think many Black families do experience that. I cannot speak of any cultures, but just the Black culture, which
Yes.
that's my experience. I have also seen that.
Oh, I'm glad that's not just me. Go ahead.
No, I have seen that, but not just that. Sometimes when you go, sometimes you also see that there are some Black people that um, view maybe white people as superior, to them and to us. But to that specific point about, you know, the example you gave, um, I think fundamentally this also drives back to the shame of being black or
Yeah.
having a brown skin or a darker skin, that equates to you are less than, less beautiful, or less intelligent, or less worthy to being a human being, or being seen as a subhuman. You know, there was this, you know, when I was at school, I used to have some of my friends telling me that, oh, we thought black people were animals, right? And now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God, that was racism. Why did I not say anything? So
Mm.
there has been this narrative for a very, very long time. We're talking about hundreds of years ago. So if you remember the slave trade, how some of our ancestors were handcuffed, and they were, some of them were not even walking. They were almost like, you know, like animals, how they were treated. I'm not sure if that treatment led to the perception that that's
Mm-hmm.
who we are. So so and that's and I think that's the problem. So therefore, you and I, darker skin compared to a lighter skin, they think lighter is better. Lighter is more worthy. Lighter is more intelligent. Lighter is more beautiful. So on and on and on and on. Now, that's not just from the white people, that's also from us, right? From us.
Correct.
We are also treated, we are treating each other like that. I have some black friends who are lighter than me. When we were young, honest to God, heart on my heart, hand on my heart, when we go out, men, boys, I would say, not men, boys, would you know, would have more interest to my light skinned friends compared to me and my other darker skinned friends, because they thought my other friends were more beautiful. So I think, to answer your question, why is that? It's because of the shame of the past. And we need to ask ourselves the question, are we loyal to the past, or are we loyal to the future? Because we cannot have it both ways. If it's the future,
Absolutely.
then we need to focus on the future, keep in mind of what the past experiences were so we can learn from it and for it not to happen, and also to seek the justice and the apology we need in order to all of us to move forward. I think that's the fundamental question. But one
Okay.
last thing,
Yes.
we all
Have I lost you there, Haddy?
experience,
Yeah, I've lost Haddy
you
for a
know, they
sec.
fought for us.
Sorry, Haddy, I lost you for a few seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, you kind of froze for a few seconds. No, you were saying about getting over the shame and the the apology we need from former slave
Yeah.
drivers.
Yeah, we need to decide which one is it, the past or
But
the
I do have
future.
a point on that, though. I do have a comment I would like to make on that. This seeking for apology and reparations for slavery.
Yeah,
It's unnecessary. Why are you seeking apologies from? I mean, why? Because if you're seeking an apology, isn't that holding on to the past and never moving forward? And there's always going to be, that back and forth, back and forth. Oh, you need to apologize to me for slavery. Oh, you need to pay me for all the things that you've taken from us and all that stuff. How do you move forward in that? And this is the thing. This is how I see it. To be able to get over something, you just have to move forward, regardless of who is around you. And as a community, this is something that we have to say, what, this happened, this past, we're not the first to be enslaved. The Israelites were enslaved, in Egypt for God knows how long. And they were enslaved in, many times over in Babylon and stuff like that. You don't hear the Jews or the Israelites, today complain about, slavery or saying that they're one of the most successful societies, you know.
yeah.
So why can't we learn from that?
Okay. Can I ask you a question? And I will,
Please.
I'll try to succinctly answer your question, right? But I'll
Yeah,
ask a
sure.
question first.
Yes.
So, um, so we have seen, for example, the postmaster issue that's been the scandal, right? The post
Okay.
office scandal, right? The
Uh,
postmaster, some of the postmasters going to jail because they were accused of stealing.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes. That was a few years ago, was that?
it's still happening now. There's an
Okay. Yes. I
inquiry,
know of
right?
some of those incidents. Yes,
So
because I did the project for them some time ago.
okay, so now some of them were accused of stealing, right? Just bear with me. I'll get to the point. This is
Yes.
very,
Yes.
very
Please.
important.
Please. Please.
Some of them were accused of stealing and they were prosecuted and went to jail, right? And for years, they've lost everything, their homes, their livelihoods, everything, right? And they have been seeking justice and an apology. And they couldn't, some of them could not move forward. They could not move on because of the shame. If you accuse me of stealing and going to jail, my entire family, friends, society knowing, thinking I stole something and I went to jail for it, damn right I want an apology. And they have been seeking for it and they've got it. Not have they only not got it, they have been financially compensated. So my
Okay.
question to you is,
I see where you're going.
if you if you were accused, Chiz, or not even accused, if let's just say one day the armed forces or some random people came to your home and treated you in the worst way possible in front of your kids, in front of your family, in front of your community, outside of your home,
Of course,
being
I'll do something about it.
well, what let's just say 100 armed officers came, you alone, you cannot fight them, and they took you away and they treated you in the worst way that humanity has ever seen, right? Would you not, in front of your kids, and maybe your kids had to go through that as well, just put yourself for a minute in that situation, and then a year goes by.
You get me on that. Yeah, you got me on that.
Would
So
you
I
not
agree.
want, no, but would you not want justice? Not just
Of
justice,
course,
but
I would
would you
want
not want an
justice.
apology?
Yes, I would want justice. But
So
if I'm not getting
that's
that,
what we are
no, no,
asking
no. Yeah,
for.
hold on. I get that. But if I'm not getting that justice, and it's a back and forth whereby the quest to get that justice is causing more harm, what do I do? So, I will have to find another way to overcome this independently and shining the light of shame on my, what do you call them? Accusers. It's
Yeah,
a way of overcoming this. So that's how I look at it. But going back to the example of the Israelites I use, I don't know if they got apology from the nation that enslaved them, the nation of Egypt and all that. Did they get that apology? I don't know. Did they get apologies from the Babylonians who enslaved them for how many years? I don't know. But eventually, maybe by divine intervention and all that stuff, they became freer. So the point
yeah,
I'm trying to make is, how long are we going to hold on to the past? We are divided amongst ourselves as a Black race.
I agree.
Yeah. If we don't come together as one, how can we move forward? Another point I had down here was, okay, I'm going to throw this out. And I'm expanding this. A few years ago, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. Kanye, yes, Kanye West, not Kanye, yes, Kanye, yeah, Kanye West. He said something, and there was a big hoo-ha about it. He said something that Black people caused slavery or racism or something like that, something along those lines, and he was criticized for it. But when you look at history, the start of racism and the whole discrimination. I mean, the Black race was a very successful race. Forget all the nonsense that people are trying to do by hiding data. You know, how did slavery start? There were Black people, maybe chiefs or whatever, or kings at that time, who were seeking benefit from the whites who came in as missionaries into Africa, and in exchange for those benefits from the white people, these Black were selling their own people, to the white, and it became a trade.
Mhm.
So I think for us to be able to understand the dynamics, and it's very complex, and I'm not saying I know half of it,
Yeah.
we have to understand history and fight a battle. If you're going to fight a battle, you fight a battle with all the information you have and know how to overcome it, as opposed to, creating more problems for the community, for the Black race,
Yeah.
by, doing things that creates more ripples and puts us in a bad light,
Yeah.
so to speak. And that's where I'm coming from. And I'm by no means an expert on this. I'm sure you've plowed through data, lots of data, and you know a lot more.
Yeah.
But just from my own little examination of history on this matter, I think there's a lot that we don't know.
Okay, I think there's a let's try and break it down a little bit, because I think there are 3 or 4 things there. The first one about moving on. Why don't we move on? Would I would argue that we are moving on, and we have been moving on progressively, massively. But that still doesn't stop us from seeking that justice and apology. Um, when you look at our success, what we have achieved in terms of Black people, with all that pain, we were and are continuing to achieve massive, massive, tremendous things that no one can imagine. There are people who are part of going to space. We have had they call it the world's most powerful country. I disagree. America, they had their first Black president. We had the first Black, her Honorable Diane Abbott being the first Black MP, and still now, there are so many successes that we have achieved despite and in spite
Of
of the
course, yes, of
pain.
course.
But we must get that justice and apology. I think that's a separate conversation. I can tell you why
Yes.
we need that, but
Okay.
maybe we can park that aside. But we need that,
We can, yes, we can.
not just
But
for
at
us.
what cost? I would say at what cost for that
Look,
apology?
the cost
That's all.
is, let me tell you what
Yes.
the biggest cost is. If we don't get that, my daughter, your kids, their generation, they will continue with that shame, because we have not got that justice. We need to get that justice for them to know that their ancestors were treated criminally, inhumanely, and they've got the justice. That's just
I get it. Yes.
one. But in terms of with Kanye West's
I
statement,
had to bring that up.
that Black people, we were part of it. I think that I still have a lot to learn. I think that what he has done is just to get information at the surface level and just blurt that out without thinking. We need
No,
we need to be able to be thinking than just prematurely saying things based on emotions. And I think that's what he was doing. Do I
okay.
partially agree with
I would
what he
disagree with
said?
that. I'm just going to mention a book to you now. But carry on talking. I'll find it and I'll tell you the title.
Do I partially agree with what he said? Yes. It wasn't, it wasn't this picture that they just came and just took us. It's so complex that there was some agreement. I think there was an agreement with, the exchange of arms and humans, or something else
Yes.
and human beings. So there was that exchange. But this is so deep rootedly complex that we need to understand why that exchange happened and why they agreed to trade our ancestors in exchange of arms and other material things. We need to get that information and maybe have someone who has more knowledge than Kanye West, you and I, to be talking about it. But
So
nonetheless,
there is, yeah,
that was criminal and that was wrong.
yeah. So there was this book. It's a really, 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 really old book. Most people would not have heard about it, but it's an exhaustive analysis of what happened. It's called, I'll send you a copy. It's called The Dual Mandate in British Tropical Africa. And it's written by Sir F.D. Lugard. I think is the Lord Lugard we know. Yeah, I'll send you a copy of it, so you can have a read of this. It's and I've by no means read it all, but what you read in here, it's yeah, would shine a whole lot of light on this. And I encourage most people who are listening to this podcast now to do your research and find this book. It's called The Dual Mandate in British Tropical Africa. And if you have access to, I'm not promoting this app. It's called Academia. You can find it on there. So yeah, so back to you, Haddie.
No, thank you for that recommendation. I'll add it to my list of reading
Books to read.
Thank you. No.
So coming back to now, how do we move forward? So in terms of, because I know you do a lot of work with with businesses as well, with organizations. So
Yeah.
how has I mean, how are you targeting because obviously when you talk about misrepresentation of the Black people in New York, we also have that, within the corporate world as well. How is your work influencing a change in that sector, in the corporate sector, in the working sector?
So what we are trying to do are two things, right? So one important, crucially important, must do thing is to start with what inclusive equal rights are trying to do. So looking at policies in education, housing, healthcare, all in all sectors, and trying to review by using data to investigate if there are evidence of disproportionate levels of systemic racism or barriers, dismantle them. I say that in a positive way, not to go and fight and be aggressive, but to bring down those
Not like
barriers.
Black Lives Matter. I'm just throwing
It's
that
our
in.
conversation, right? This conversation is proving that you and I have very different views when it comes to this. I am a champion of Black Lives Matter.
I do a lot of research.
It's just recently when,
Yes.
unfortunately, the leader in America misused the financial, the funding for
But there was a
personal.
lot of violence as well.
Yes, but fundamentally, the message of Black Lives Matter just means we should be treated equally in all areas, fundamentally, and to keep it simple. We're
Yeah.
going back to IEI UK. So that's what we're
Yes.
trying to do because there is evidence, and there is evidence of institutional racism. So you think about in all sectors, we go in there and trying to use data as evidence to inform the evidence, but also inform the solutions, so that there is less of that disproportionate level of treatment in all areas. That's what we're trying to do when it comes to societal and social issues, right? But not forgetting, we all go to school, some of us, we go to learn or we go to work. And this is where the other part comes in. We are saying to institutions that they have a part to play. So we go to work, we go to school to learn. How are we being treated? Right?
Yes.
How equitable is that environment? Are we being treated fairly? Are we being taught accurately, fairly? Give us the right history. If you go to work to do what you're supposed to do, and you've been treated based on your skin color, where is the accountability? How do we solve that? So that's what we're trying to do at the corporate level. But more
On that point,
importantly,
yeah.
just
Sorry,
more
on that point, I just want to
importantly,
say something. Sorry, on the school
no,
part, because my daughter had been going through a lot at school, and I've had to
yeah,
fight that battle. And I don't like to blame racism for some of the things that happen, but the amount of pressure she was getting at school, my goodness, there was no way I couldn't act. And I had to fight that battle and let them know that I'm not, or this is not a Black family you are going to walk
yeah,
over. And I guarantee you that, So, yeah, so I'm with you on fighting that battle. So let's go.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, because if you look at schools and institutions or workplaces, it lacks that platform, that system, so that we can proactively mitigate that from happening. And if it does happen, how do we swiftly, quickly act because there is the accountability aspect in there. So at the moment, I cannot see both happening in any place. But just on the last thing on the corporate level,
Sure.
is we want organizations to really value, when we talk about diversity, what we mean is about decision making and asking the question, is everyone in the room, is everyone in the room when it comes to making decisions? So you have a technology firm, right? Your customer base includes everyone, including all communities, and
Of
your
course.
decision making board are all from one ethnicity. So clearly you are missing a large portion of other people that
That are your
constitute,
consumers.
well, yes, your consumer base. So how do we get their voices heard? So just for you in terms of business, you get that holistic, overview of voices, so you can cater and expand your revenue essentially. Because if you know what everyone, your customer base needs and their expectations and requirements, then you can go and build that thing. So that's a positive for you. But also for us and other people, they are being heard, they are being listened to. So when that service or product is being built, they are being catered to as well and not being left behind. So that's what when we
Absolutely.
talk about diversity, that's what we are trying to help board members and institutions and
How
organizations.
are you doing
They
that
take
with board
advantage.
members?
Sorry?
How are you doing that with board members?
It's
How
a
are you
difficult,
accessing them?
it's difficult. But for example, a company, so we're focusing in York and locally first because we want to do this incrementally, not do it for money or anything. So we have a company that will come to us and say, look, realistically, our board members, they're all white, they're all men, and we are we are not really doing well when it comes to decision making to cater to our customer base or consumer base. So we can ask the question, well, okay, if you're recruiting, we can help you. We can build. We are building a portfolio of different specialists and expertise from different backgrounds. So a company X come to us and say we want to increase our diversity, and we will be readily supply them with candidates, qualified candidates from different backgrounds. But also, if you look at when I was doing my master's in international corporate law, right, my thesis was looking at the comparison between the UK shareholder value focus versus the Germany stakeholder value. So in Germany, most companies, they have their employees sitting at the board level, the diverse employees sitting at board level. So when decisions are being made, it's not just those people making the decisions. The employees are also part of the decision making. So that's what we are trying to also do here, to say you may have all middle-aged white men, as many do say that most organizations in the UK consist of, right? And that's a fact. It happens. That's the case. So if they are not recruiting at the board level, but they really want that diverse level of representation and decision making, we can help them use the German model, which I have studied and was part of my master's program, to make sure that they have that diversity of thinking, the diversity of decision making, notwithstanding not good, but they still have the board level, which is not representative at all.
What's the German model? Do you mind sharing it?
It's a stakeholder. I mean, I can share it with you, and then maybe you can post it to for
Yeah,
your.
okay. That would be
It's a,
great.
they
I'll put that
focus
in the
on
link.
stakeholder engagement. Maybe there's a other word to it. So I did my master's in 2009. This is over 10 years ago, almost. Yeah, very
Okay.
long time. But they focus on stakeholder engagement. They think about when decisions are being made, it's not just about the value of shareholders, dividends, profit making. They focus on community, their employees, their consumers, and so on and so forth. And they bring them as part of their decision making journey. That's why Germany, look, you cannot argue it, they're thriving. They're thriving, they're doing
Yeah.
very well compared to the UK.
So in most companies, obviously, there are Black people who work in these companies, and most of them do have this belief that their skin color is a limitation to their growth, so to speak,
Yeah.
and most times would end up not pushing beyond the level where they're at. I mean, would you say that's true, or would you say that they need some education in terms of, how they should rise up? Because there have been a few successful people who have gotten to the top of their career. And one person I'm going to mention is a African guy. You probably know him, Tijani Tiam. He used to be the head of what's this financial company? I can't remember the name of the
Credit
company now, but
Suisse.
it's a finance. Huh?
Credit Suisse.
Yeah, he was at Credit Suisse, but before he went to Credit Suisse, he was with I can't remember the name of the company now. But Tijani Tiam is one person that I would really say has risen beyond the stereotype to achieve a level of influence globally that most Black people don't, achieve.
Yeah.
And, in my opinion, I think it's down to you, the individual. If you see limitation, that's what you're going to get, limitation. But what do you have to say about that?
Okay, I think again a lot to say on this, so I'll try and make it concise, but provide, share my opinions and my beliefs on this. So I think that there are many who are doing extremely well so if we focus in the UK, there are many
Yes.
Black people who are doing extremely well. Some are seen in the public eye, some are not. Because I know a lot who are doing extremely, extremely well, very powerful in their position and authority. But some decide to have a low profile, don't want to be out there. But when it comes to the other part of it, I have seen it. I do see some people who do self segregate themselves. And also, so for example, they may go to a town or to a city and they wouldn't want to integrate into the society and the culture. They just want to be in their own bubble. And that does affect your progression, that does affect your ability to open your mind and engage and immerse yourself into the community and with people. And that does also have some negative ripple effects, because that just doesn't give you access to much, and therefore
And it's
how you
also
progress.
perceived by the other parties as well. It's also perceived because you're sending signals, negative signals that puts you in a box.
Indeed, indeed. But there is an argument to that, which is I know there are some people in the work we do, we speak to a lot of communities. There are some who say, well, we have no choice, because if they choose to go and engage or integrate, they get abused, they get racial abuse, or they are targeted. And who wants to feel like that? Who wants to go, for example, to a bar? It's a Friday night. Everyone loves a Friday night. You go to a bar and immediately you've been racially profiled just because you are the only person who looks different. So if that keeps on happening on a multiple occasions, honestly, you will feel I don't need to go there anymore. I can just stay here with my small community. So
Mm.
there's an argument why some do it, but I think it's not the right way of doing it.
I agree with you. I mean, everyone has got a different level of tolerance. For example, I don't see color. So if I walk in somewhere and I'm being, racially profiled, that's their business. I'm going there for what I want, and that's how I've always approached things. And it's giving me access to places most people don't really get to. And I'm not just sticking within my own Black community, but in other communities as well, the white, the Asians, the Middle East or whatever. If you see that limitation, then that's what's going to be a roadblock before you even start taking the first step. And I have this experience I want to share. This was a few years ago. I was doing a project for a finance company in London, and It was one evening, it was sometime after 5 o'clock, and this guy walked up to me, black guy, African guy, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I've not had the chance to come, and I know I see you around the office. I haven't come to say hello. You know how it's like, when these white people see, two black people standing together, they start to think that we are planning to, do something bad or steal or cause some kind of problems." And I step back for a minute and say, I don't think that's the right way to look at things. And to be honest, that experience has stuck with me because to my point earlier on in terms of Black people seeing themselves as limitation, why would you think? I mean, you're okay standing with your fellow white colleagues, your fellow Asian colleagues, but when it comes to your Black colleagues, you stay away, you don't want to get in touch, you don't want to say hello. I've been other places whereby, I see a fellow black person, I want to say hello, say hello, they put their head down, walk straight and go. You know, uh,
Yeah.
the problem is on both sides.
Yeah.
It's on both sides. I mean, can you imagine that? And this is someone who was high up in his job,
Oh, really?
thinking that way.
Oh, wow.
You know. So I mean, have you experienced anything like that? I mean, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts about that?
So I have also experienced that where people have tried to look people in the eye. I mean, I am an eye person. I like to look people in the eye and smile, and they will just put their heads down or turn as if they haven't seen me. Um, I don't know. I don't know what is that. What I do know, what my therapist said to me, and I'm making it in a simplistic explanation, is like you can never know what people are going through in their head,
Mhm.
and you never know what they are thinking. So I've stopped to take it personally, and just think, I don't know what it is. I've done my part, and that's that. But to focus this onto your point, I look. This is my third time saying I think this is also going back to shame, because even some of us are shameful of who we are. So maybe when they see you, my only assumption is, oh, I don't think I'm good enough. Or I don't think that, Black people grouping together is a positive thing. So if I see Chizubel, and I stopped and talking to him, it might just be viewed as something bad, or we are not focused on our work, or we are not, we are just taking the mick, because there are
Mhm.
so many connotations of what being blackness is about. So it's also going back to that shame. Look, I think I cannot really emphasize why we need a justice and apology, because it's deep rooted and linked with the shame of it.
Yeah.
It's deep. I think it's that some of us have not celebrated what our ancestors had to fight, and their allies, what they had to fight for us to have the freedom we have now. And if we cannot see it that way, we will continue with that shame. Um, how do I think we should move forward? I think we need people like you. We need
I'm
people
here.
like
I'm ready.
you.
I'm setting the trend. I'm not just setting the trend, but I'm, here doing what I'm doing and I'm accessing places. So if anyone wants to know how to do it, then let's talk.
Yeah,
Haddie is here doing something really challenging. My goodness, Haddie, this is a big, mission you're on to transform not just York, but what you're
yeah,
doing is going to impact the entire
yeah.
nation.
Not just York.
And
We want to start. We've started with York. Oh, you broke up there a little bit. I cut
yes, yes, go ahead. Can you?
you off.
Yeah. Are
No,
you back? I'm back.
We've started York, and okay. So you're right. We've started a work in York. It's progressing very well. The next step is we've got the anti-racism strategy. We had the tagline. We've got the strategy with the action plan. The next step is the formulation of the task force, the anti-racism task force, to implement
Wow,
the
that is huge.
recommendation. That's huge. But we need people like
Anti-racism
you.
task force. Oh my goodness.
Yes, it's starting very
Wow.
soon, by the way, starting in June. So be on the lookout. We
Oh,
This is
okay.
a
You got to
strategy,
fill
by the
me
way,
in.
and this strategy has
Amazing. Wow.
87 actions to implement, to make sure we
Who's going to
move
have
the
access to
racism
that? Who's got
areas.
access? Who can get that?
Oh, you can get this at IERUK.
Can I pop the link in the podcast as well so people can access it? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. So if you
Okay, I'll
go,
do that.
so please, yeah, please do that. People can ieruk.org.uk/strategy. It will take you immediately to that document. But I was saying, Chiz, we need people like you. I'll tell you why. We need people who can be in a room and be the only Black or person of color and not afraid and not threatened or not feeling or not threatening, not threatened or not threatening. So
It goes
that,
both ways, yes.
yeah, so that you, so people can see what Blackness looks like in a positive way, right? We also need people like you who are thinking differently, because there's many beliefs out there that all Black people are monolithic. We are not. We have different opinions, different beliefs, different views. So you, with your voice of your difference, of how you think differently, helps us to have better and quality conversations so we can get to the solutions. Okay?
Hadi, I'm on this with you.
Yeah.
You know, whatever I need to do, just I'm there. We'll talk offline, and I want to work with you on this. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to be in any place and wherever to have this conversation that would change
Yeah.
the narrative of the Black race. You know, in any little way we can. As you know, they say, I'm not trying to advertise them. Every little helps. I'm sure everybody knows where that comes from.
But
Um,
can I
yes,
say, and this might sound a bit controversial. I've
it's
talked about
controversial. Say this is the show for it. You know. You're a risk
the
champ,
risk.
you know, so say it. Let's get controversial. Come on, let's do
So
it.
I've talked about why we need people like you, right?
Yes.
But if I extend this to all Black people, I can only, again, I would like to talk to all people from different ethnicity. But if we just focus on
We're
Black people,
focusing on Black for now.
um, I think we need to do two things. One is we need to look at ourselves differently. I think, unfortunately, some of us, we need to really consciously be self-aware how we think and how we act, because some of us have this mindset of the slavery mindset, of the superior and inferior mindset, and of this poverty mindset. So therefore, if you have, I will not have, and therefore I will not support you. I can minimize or undermine my fellow person of marginalized community, but therefore the one that has been viewed as superior, oh, I can let them get away with it,
Mm,
right? We do that, and we need to stop that. And I say,
absolutely.
to stop it, it sounds easy. This is deep rooted, but we need to do a big work on ourselves. The second important thing that I see um, is that I'm trying to choose my words very carefully.
Please don't choose. Just say it like it is. Let's get controversial. This
Is
is the
that
platform for it.
if we are to say no more to racism, no more to
Mhm.
discrimination, we also need to stop being racist towards
Ourselves.
ourselves and towards other
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
And it cannot go both ways, because that's hypocritical.
It is.
Um,
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
so I I've been challenging myself, challenging my family and my friends in perhaps how we have unconsciously been thinking, or how, beliefs have been instilled within us. But having conversations and challenging ourselves, it does reveal that some of us, if not most of us, are racist. So how can we
Yes.
say Britain must solve racism, but when we are individually, societally racist?
You know, that's a great point there because when there's a saying, I can't remember how it's put, I think it's an African proverb, only a thief knows a fellow thief. And it's the same thing. If you are seeing racism in someone else, it means that you have something in you that's also racist.
Mm.
You know, so when you get rid of that, then you stop seeing racism.
Yeah.
And that is work to be done on both sides. Then there's quite a number. I don't think we have enough time to cover so much in this show because there's so much I want to talk about. Maybe we're going to do a part two because one of that I was going to talk about was the scramble for Africa, the plundering of resources and things like
Yeah.
that. That's another show. We'll do that. Also,
Can I just
yes,
please
please go ahead.
interject, please? This
Yes,
is
please.
really important. I am first a Gambian, right? And then an African. Yes, I grew up in this country. This is also my home, but it's fundamentally my continent. So we talk about a lot of issues about Africa, and they're all two things can be true. But I don't believe this is what I think we should get to a solution. And in the past,
Oh,
I have tried but failed. But I would really like to be part of how we take Africa forward. I don't think we lack Africa doesn't lack talent.
no.
Africa doesn't lack the intellectual ability. It doesn't lack the competence aspect of it. I think what we lack at the moment and what's stopping us, and right, we need to do more. I'm putting my hand up. I need to do more. Is we are lacking um, the the contestation. We are lacking the numbers to go and transform Africa. You may have pockets of people, pockets of different things going and doing things. But if we collectively take Africa in the diaspora and go to Africa with those people, I don't think Africa will be labeled as what it's been labeled, for the
Would
past
you
few years.
say integrity is
Corruption.
also lacking?
Sorry?
Would you say integrity is also lacking?
Integrity, morality, inherently morality, integrity, how Africans, how we view ourselves, that's also
Correct.
a problem. But we are lacking the numbers, the contestations to take Africa, the future of Africa forward. I think we are lacking that. Is the numbers. But we have the
Oh, sure.
numbers. We have the numbers. There was this
Yes.
evidence, this
It's
data
interesting
that
you
was
said
saying
that.
Africa is the brain dump in Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you said that because a few years ago, I mean, I had this mindset of taking a lot of what I've learned over here from the West back to advance Africa, to advance Nigeria, which is where I come from. Um, I met resistance.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, having to interact and meet some of the top banks in Nigeria to bring in processes or, systems that will transform the banking sector, drastically reduce um, drastically reduce the amount of, you know, fraud in the banking system, both at the ATM or over the counter and all that stuff. I met resistance within, those circuits, amongst my peers, the fellow Black people, Nigerians,
Yeah.
time wasters and all that stuff. But put me in a different color, they would definitely say yes. And that's the thing I've seen. Again, it happened when I was trying to do something with the government in the capital, Abuja. Same thing, same thing. A major project that would have transformed and put Nigeria on the map, it wasn't said yes to, but they ended up working with the Chinese, and it was such an appalling project that was delivered. But these are the things that needs to change. Like you talk about, you know, us having to solve the problems amongst ourselves as Black people. We're not going to move forward in the world stage unless we
Yeah.
come together as one and address the internal rivalries we have, and then we can move forward as a race and take on the world.
Yeah. It goes back to my point about how perhaps it's the poverty mindset that, oh, Chizubel is coming from the UK. He has this idea. If I support him, he'll have more. I will have less. And Chizubel
Interesting.
is
Good
coming from
point.
the UK. I am here in Nigeria. There are so many different. I'm not saying that's the case, but I
Mm,
I have experienced something similar, and I know a lot
mhm.
of people who have tried to go back to the Gambia or other parts of Africa, and they experience the same thing.
Similar
So the
thing.
question is, as Africans, the first question is why, and then we can start looking at the solutions. Partly, maybe we are to be blamed. Maybe we are a bit arrogant as well, obnoxious. Oh, I'm coming from the UK. I have all the solutions, so I'm gonna take it back to Africa. Maybe that's not the way. I'm just saying we need to have a conversation, but
Absolutely.
a lot of blockers that from those from the diaspora going back to do good, a lot of blockers which
So
are
many.
intentionally built to stop us.
So many. Haddie, you are amazing. You are, I'm loving this conversation. I want you to do something, please.
Okay.
You were so wise in
I need
this.
my glasses
This
on. No.
Put your glasses on. I look like a
It sounds so
professor.
serious.
Yeah, please
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead. Okay. I want you to look at the camera, please. And
Okay.
the people. The people we need to reach. We can't. I mean, whoever's going to listen to this podcast is going to come from different, racial backgrounds, and it may just as well reach, or it may as well reach some of the stakeholders you're trying to reach. Speak to them. What would you like them to take away from this podcast, from this conversation we've just had? And what next steps would you like them and us to take?
Okay. 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 I'm gonna ingest.
In just a few seconds, in just a few minutes,
I'm gonna
not nothing.
ingest a bit of a humor and start with,
Please go ahead.
dear my people, dear people. Um, no, but seriously, for anyone listening to Cheese and be it an individual working in a supermarket, being in a in a manager position, to a decision maker, a board, a policy maker, but to all of you,
A
I want
politician.
politicians, people with power and authority. The work, first of all, we are doing in York is not about finger pointing and blaming. What we are doing essentially is using data and evidence to demonstrate that we have issues of institutional barriers and racism, just like how we deal with bullying, how we deal with ageism and disability. What I am and what we are saying is we want that equal priority to start looking at and building those barriers down and rebuilding them for fairer, equitable society for everyone. But please listen to this. I have an 18-month-old baby, a daughter, and I want her generation to not to go through what we have seen and experienced. If you haven't seen or experienced racism, you know a friend or a friend who have had experience of racism. And I want my daughter, and the reason why we do this work is for my daughter and her generation not to be racially profiled because she has a brown skin, not to be told, and God forbid, I would never want to tell her that she has to work twice or 10 times harder to be recognized, to be valued, or to be appreciated or treated fairly. I want my daughter and her generation to be free when they wherever they are, to be seen as human beings worthy of respect, worthy of feeling, yes, this is someone that we must not mistreat. I want a generation for you and I to start looking at being Black is powerful, that what our ancestors have done for us should be taken with so much pride and celebrated. They fought for our freedoms to be here today. So we should take that crown, put it on our heads proudly, and start changing the narrative that being Black is powerful. But lastly, perhaps I'm going on a little bit, just think about doing this work in an intelligent and strategic way, and start it with York and go around the UK and dismantling, removing those barriers and dealing with racism with data and evidence and solving them, then really we wouldn't be accused of the UK being a racist country, although unfair, but we do have serious issues of racism. And it doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're Chinese, it doesn't matter if you're white. If we don't deal with this issue, it will happen in our next generation, and on and on and on. That's what we're trying to stop.
Amazing, Haddy. That was really heartfelt. I really felt that, and this is what we want to do, is to make the changes um, that would have a positive impact on us now and the next generation. I really appreciate you sharing your wonderful insights. And this conversation doesn't end here. We're going to be having this conversation going forward, and there's going to be more activities and more information coming through to listeners on this subject. But before we wrap up, Haddy,
Okay.
one more question for you.
I
My
hope it's
fellow.
not as serious as the last one, because
No,
I
no,
nearly
it's
gave up.
not a
I nearly
serious
gave up.
question. No, it's serious, but not serious. But this is you and me. We come from a risk background, and
Oh,
we're still
risk.
doing this whole. Yeah, we're still on this journey of risk taking, and you are taking a really big risk here, and you are a risk taker. And my question for you is you know, there are 5 types of risk takers, and I'm going to tell you what they are, and I want you to tell us which one you are. So 5 types of risk takers. I call this the superhero risk question. So active risk taker, you are ready and not afraid to take risks. You are the passive risk taker, too cautious and scared to take any risk or significant risk. You're a hybrid risk taker and you float between the active and the passive. A material risk taker, you take high value risk. You're you're a material person, and if you were not there, something bad is going to happen. And finally, the dynamic risk taker, you are the master of all the above. Which one would you say you are?
This is easy. Easy peasy.
I told you, easy question.
It's easy for me. I'll tell you why. Because
Yes.
after practicing risk management for almost 15 years and learning from you, you were my manager when we met in London, one of the
Yeah.
best risk practitioners, if not the best. It's the last one. It's indeed the dynamic.
Dynamic.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
take risk, but in a calculated way, and you put measures in place, you can achieve wonders. You can actually achieve things that you are fearful of doing.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. Thank you, Haddy. I really appreciate that. Yeah, meeting when we met in London and we worked together at that firm. It was an opportunity that has now materialized into what we are doing today. And this is what we talk about when we build relationships, when we meet people, is how we nurture this relationship that determines what comes out of it. And look where we are today. If we were to rewind 10 years ago, we didn't know we're going to be having this podcast today. Well, here we are. And now we're talking about working together on this journey of anti-racism. So this is one way to showcase that we do have a purpose in life. And that purpose is being, achieved through the risks we take. And being a dynamic risk taker, is certainly an art that once you do achieve it, nothing is a barrier anymore. And you are demonstrating this through this purpose of trying to make York and, by wider extension, the entire England, UK, if not the world, racism free, or at least, by measure, and then leave a legacy for others to follow. So thank you, Hadi. It's been a wonderful conversation. Where can people find you? You've mentioned the website, but if any company wants to get in touch with you, I want to work
Yeah.
with you, in their organization to make it a lot more equitable, how can people reach you?
Yeah. So when it comes to institutional racism, societal racism, IERU, Inclusive Equal Rights UK, you can visit us at ieruk.org.uk. When you go onto our website, you can contact us. There's a contact form, or you can go to hello@ieruk.org.uk. But we are also on LinkedIn and on X. Yeah, so you can find us there. When it comes to corporate organizations, IER UK will lead you to Speak Up Diversity, or you go to speakupdiversity.com, or we can certainly get in touch. Cheers, before we go, thank you for taking a big risk yourself to talk about anti-racism or racism. I know many people are uncomfortable and to talk about this difficult topic, but you took a big risk, and I am certain that it will be rewarding for the podcast, but for your audience. Hopefully, they can learn from it and they can build some courage to continue the conversation, or to join us, all of us, to make sure we address the root causes of racism in the UK.
I appreciate that, Hadi. Thank you very much. It's wonderful having you on the Risk Champs podcast, and definitely, you know, this topic has been one that I've not really, had a conversation up on a public forum because of how controversial I can come across.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid to address controversies or to take on the stuff that's challenging. That's what risk taking is all about. So it's a pleasure doing that with you, my fellow risk comrade. So
Dynamic risk taker.
dynamic risk takers, my fellow dynamic risk taker, absolutely. And there's more we're going to be doing. So really, really appreciate this. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're gonna be doing more work together.
Yes,
So
I'm looking forward to it. Yes.
yes, amazing. So it's great.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Hadi.
Take care. Bye bye.
The Risk Chance Podcast.